Okay, to begin with, for today, what I will do, as usual, I will quickly go through the important points from the slides about internal auditing. Okay, what are the most important thing that you need to know with regard to the internal auditing, and then after that, we will actually quickly go through the case, just to see uh, how to apply the concept or the facts that we learn about internal auditors. Okay. All right. Normally, in the class lah, okay, during the face-to-face class, I always promote when it comes to a certain particular job with regard to the auditors. Okay, I always promote my students to join auditing line. Okay, because it actually will give you a strong foundation for your career development. Because the way of exposure that you obtain during the work of audit, okay, and also the experience and also the skill that you acquired throughout the process. Okay, of course, when you ask people last time, people always recommend you to go to the external auditors, but then nowadays internal auditors also a new area or the new position that you might want to join, okay, for you to have a very good exposure, because nowadays internal auditors also quite challenging and also quite interesting, okay, in the term of the experience and also exposure that you get. Alright, because nowadays the job scope that done by the internal auditors is quite interesting in the sense that they look at the business strategy, they look at the business operation, and then they also look at the efficiency and effectiveness. Now they also become advisory, okay, rather than just doing compliance. Okay, so for those who like to work in the consulting line, okay, internal auditors also is actually another area that you can join, okay, because they actually recruit what's this, a fresh grads, all right, because sometimes if you apply after you grads, you apply to the consulting firm, normally uh, they don't recruit because they're actually looking for more experienced people, but internal auditors, they recruit fresh grad. And also you are being exposed to different kind of job, okay, in terms of like compliance and assurance work and also advisory work, okay, and the pay also not so bad, all right, quite good. And then exposure, okay, that's thing. And then another thing is that in terms of the workload and working hours is not as compared to external auditors, because of course they have peak season and so on, but yet the peak season is like they don't have like every day you have to go back late, okay. The worst, of course, during the due date or during the deadline of the reports, then maybe, but that one the most also you will stay until 8 o'clock at night, okay. And they have work on daily basis in terms of project, job and so on. So your work is actually throughout the year, okay. So not so much of peak season, all right. So a bit relaxed, not to say a bit relaxed, I mean a bit less pressure compared to as an auditor, when during the peak season you like overnight, almost like weekend you have to come to the office, okay, you have to stay back late, work in the office and so on, okay. So internal auditors also, if you were to refer to my recorded lecture, you can see that there are different types of internal auditors, okay. Of course, I'm talk a lot more of internal because you have many different types of internal auditors. So the one that I really focus in the topic or in the class will be internal auditors who work in the private sector. Okay, private sector such as company, and of course most of the time will be listed company. Okay, because listed company nowadays is compulsory for them to have internal auditors. So, and in fact, they see the value or the values of having internal auditors, okay, to the company. So that's why they have more internal auditors nowadays compared to last time, okay. So coming back to just now, you have different types of internal auditors, and of course different type were actually exposed to different kind of job. All right, so you have internal auditors in private sector and also internal auditors in public sector. Okay, so in public sector means that you are attached to a particular agency, statutory bodies or government agency and so on. Okay, if you attach to National Audit Department, that one is actually being considered as an external auditor for the public sector. Okay, so it's different because they audit all the ministry, because internal means you work internally within that particular entity or company. Okay, so if we were to look at the slides that I shared, share content. Wait, I'm sharing the where's the slide? Okay, so so there is different types of auditors that we have, right? So if you want to ask any question with regard to a particular part about internal auditors or internal auditing, go ahead. Okay, just stop me. Because maybe some of you actually be exposed to the job of internal audit during your practical training. Okay, all right. Okay, so nowadays what happened is that they actually work in a various scope of work. Okay, of course the ultimate focus is the governance, risk and control, but at the same time they also look at the efficiency of the operations, okay, level of compliance for certain regulations such as like banking sector. They check the compliance of the banking regulations, okay, to the requirement of the Bank Negara and so on. And then at the same time they also provide consulting job. Okay, consulting job is like when the company itself require them to do a consulting job. For instance, they want to improve, let's say they have a cost cutting strategy, okay, for a particular subsidiary. All right, so what they will do, they will ask the internal auditors to come and have an overall checking of the operations and see what are the areas of that can be further apply cost cutting strategy. Okay, why they employ internal auditors? Because internal auditors is actually exposed to different part of the business. Okay, different part of the business of the subsidiary. Okay, different part, that means internal auditors know about the business entity, the groups and so on, right? And then they know the rules, they know the regulations and so on, the law. So they know more or less they know everything. Okay, you are supposed to like an auditors, all right? You need to know about the business laws and so on. Then from there, you actually also an external party who come into the business operation and see what actually the business are doing. All right, and then you might able to see where are the redundancy, okay, what are the area for improvement, okay, or what are the leaking in terms of control, weaknesses and so on. So that's why auditors can nowadays do the consulting work, okay, or advisory work. All right. Talking about another thing, last time there is one question asking about internal auditors independency. Okay, internal auditors, yes, they are working with the company, so they actually an employee for the company. All right, but how they retain or maintain their independence? Okay, so when they are being employed, they're being employed by the company. Okay, however, when they do their work, the task, the assignment is all monitored or overseen by audit committee. Okay, all monitored and overseen by audit committee. So audit committee, as I already explained under the topic of corporate governance, you are comprised of independent directors. Of independent directors. So you are actually nothing to do with the company. You are not part of the management of the company. Okay, so as if an internal auditor is actually reporting to external party of the company. All right, so that's why nowadays in the standard, okay, internal audit standard, right, this is applied globally, worldwide. Okay, so it's already mentioned internal auditors must report in terms of their job. Okay, functional reporting is actually report to audit committee. So in terms of determination of their work, okay, the job scope, the area, okay, what to do, what to look at and so on, all come from audit committee. Okay, so that's why if they have a good audit committee, internal auditors also could be effective. And normally this also depends on the how good is their head or chief audit chief internal audit. Okay, So that's one. And then the audit committee itself must be very proactive. All right, they also know about the business. They also know what to look at in order to check and to do the check and balance on the management and so on. Okay, and then another thing is that so they report functionally to the audit committee, and then approval. Okay, and furthermore, to further strengthen the position of the audit internal audit in the company is that the appointment, okay, the termination, the assessment of the performance, the termination of the remuneration for the chief internal audit also is done by audit committee. Okay, so because why? Why is it all these element determined by the committee? Because if it is determined by management, okay, if let's say you are the chief internal audit, you would feel like obliged to maybe you have found some errors or weaknesses or mistake, okay, or something, a big issue about the management. Okay, sometimes you might be in the dilemma whether to report or not, because you know your salary is actually determined by the company, okay, by the management. So of course you don't want to do something bad to the management. Okay, so that's why to avoid the conflict of interest, all these element, okay, when I'm talking about just now related to the chief internal audit, is actually also overseen by audit committee. Okay, so that is also another way of how the independence of internal audit function is all being determined or being practiced in the company. Okay, so there are ways, okay, how to retain the independence of internal audit in the company. Okay, so way first by reporting, and then to the audit committee, and secondly by overseeing the scope of the HR matters actually with regard to the chief internal audit. All right, of course they report to management, but more on the administrative matters only, if they want to take leave or if they want, so all those nothing to do with their job. Okay, their core duties, all right, to the internal audit. All right, so that's how it's actually despite of being employed by the company, they can still eventually retain their independence. Okay, and then also in the company, there are also practices of where internal auditors are used as a pool of secondment. Okay, secondment means like you are actually from other department, but you are being seconded to internal audit department. Okay, so it's also part of the training ground for the managers to get a quick overview about the business, about the company, about the issues, about the regulations, and everything basically about the company. Okay, so in that sense, this person cannot actually audit their own department, okay, if they were to perform the audit. So there are ways actually, okay, there are ways of how internal auditors should maintain their independence. All right, and all these matter are clearly stated in the internal audit standard, which is PPF. Okay, PPF is actually Professional Practices Framework, which is actually issued by Institute of Internal Auditors. The HQ or the headquarters is actually in US, and we do have our own IIA Malaysia chapter in Malaysia. Okay, so it is actually similar to other accountant body, professional body, which you are also worldwide recognized. Okay, if you were to get any professional qualification from this Institute of Internal Auditors. Okay, so that's why this is also another branch. All right, if let's say you like to work as an auditor but you don't want to be an external auditor, so you can actually become an internal auditor, which is also more or less a similar exposure and benefits that you get in terms of learning curve, okay, with regard to the industry and so on. Okay, and then the nature, of course, okay, this is also an opportunity lah, right? Because nowadays, internal auditors also have, what do we call this? External provider. Okay, so maybe after years you are in the industry, you can also become or set up your own company. You become an entrepreneur where you set up your own company and then a consultant firm, and you also provide internal auditing services to external party. Okay, external company. All right, so this is also another way of how to look at the job scope in terms of internal auditing. Alright, wah advance ni I tak discuss lagi about the case. I thought I want to discuss first, then only you paste on the Padlet. Okay, what else I want to talk about? So these are the sources. All right, you have in-house, you have co-source. So now, of course, before offer or provide internal audit services, okay, to the companies, and of course, we also have a standalone consulting firm, okay, which also provide internal audit. All right. Of course, the profession is regulated, but in terms of not that stringent, okay. They are still regulated by statutory by the professional body, but a lot more improvement also can be recommended. Okay. All right. When I mentioned about the performance standards, okay, attribute standard is just an idea for you, okay, an idea for you. What kind of, because in external audit, okay, if you recall, when you do your work, okay, how to collect evidence, how to do documentation, how to do audit planning, okay, and how to accept client, everything is guided by ISA, International Standards of Auditing. So that is standard used to govern external audit work, okay. However, for internal auditors, their job is actually governed by Professional Practices Framework, which is PPF, and the main element in the PPF is actually this one, okay, the attributes standards and also performance standard. Okay, so performance standard is actually the one that I explained how they want to conduct their engagement or their audit engagement, starting from planning up until reporting. Okay, so this is like their Bible or their Quran lah. Okay, so similar like to ISA for external auditor, but for internal auditors, this is actually their main references. So another thing that I also would like to highlight is that because in Malaysia nowadays we're also talking a lot about Sharia auditor. Okay, Sharia auditor at this moment they are also using this performance PPF as their reference, as their means of reference in term or benchmark in order to do their work. Okay, so there is no like specific auditing standards or practices which is specifically govern the Sharia audit per se. Okay, because if we were to look at the definition of internal auditing in the standards is actually to assist company achieve organizational objective, right? But of course, for Sharia auditor, you're actually beyond that. Okay, you also actually at the same time looking at the maslahah of ummah, which is to align to the maqasid of Sharia. Okay, which is actually not spelled out in the IIA standards. Okay, which is fair enough because this one is actually issued by global, okay, by US HQ, which is very much govern the conventional internal auditors. Okay, so this you might see few more developments. Okay, perhaps later on we might have a specific auditing standard for Sharia audits. Okay, so these are some of the, that's why I said the area of internal auditing is now still evolving. Okay, it's evolving, very much evolving starting from year 2000. Okay, so from year 2000 when the definition changed, that's where the role of internal auditors in the company, in the business is really evolving and how they actually now being looking for, okay, to assist the company, help the company improve the company performance. Okay, that's why actually I feel excited when I explain about internal auditing because it's really evolving. Okay, it's in fact when talking about audit approach also, if talk relate back, we remember because in IT and audit I explained about audit tools, okay, data-driven audit approach, alright, risk-based audit approach. They are actually more advanced, okay, compared to external auditor, right? Because they have been using EDP, electronic data processing, for quite some time already. Okay, even long time before the era of RR 4.0, before the era of big data itself. Okay, they're already using that electronic data processing long time, even back to 1980s. Okay, so they have been using it for quite some time already. So that's why if we were to talk about data analytics or data driven audit approach, in audit methodology or audit approach, okay, or in doing the audit in a layman term, they are more advanced compared to external auditor. Okay, and they use a lot because they are within the company, so they have more easy access to the data, and then they can also analyze a lot more. Okay, and that's where also the role, their role as an advisory also being upgraded. Okay, because of the way of how they conduct their audit. Okay. These are the objective, independent just now. Okay, these are the activity I mentioned just now, assurance consulting. Okay, this is actually their audit approach, systematic and discipline means they use risk-based, and on top of that, they use technology. Okay, so that's why they are actually more advanced. In fact, when I do some research or some study, it's proven, all right, it's proven actually they are more advanced. That's why the one that I exposed to you, the ACL, okay, or the HIBON, is actually very much being used by internal auditors long time before. Okay, it's 80s. Okay, so if you look at the code of ethics, still the same. Okay, similar to the accounting profession. And then, okay, these are the performance standard. Okay, basically how to conduct the audit and so on. Okay, this is internal audit charter. Okay, they have internal audit charter. This is actually to spell out to the management what are the do's and the don'ts, and then what are their scope. Okay, and also their position. So this is to make it clear to the management. Okay, what actually the reason for the rationale of having internal auditors. Okay, so internal audit charter is actually very important. All right. And then these are the different types of audit. Okay, they have IT audit, they have operational audit. Operational means you look at operation efficient or not. Okay, effective or not. Compliance is more of looking at the compliance to the law, to the regulation. Okay, and then internal auditors deal a lot with external auditors and also audit committee. Okay, this is what I already mentioned just now, differences and similarity. Okay, in terms of fraud, all right, because the case that I already given to you, okay, there is where we actually want to look at what are the roles of internal auditors in that situation. Okay, so this particular slide is actually telling you the procedures or the steps that internal auditors need to do whenever they found some red flag indicators or some trigger points that need further attention by internal auditors. Okay. All right, I think I'll stop at that point to let you ask some question if you have any, and then after that we proceed with the case. Okay, anyone have the question?
Madam.
No question?
Hello, madam.
Tak ada question ke? No question at all. Can you all hear?
Madam, tadi ada orang panggil tapi tak dengar sangat.
Tadi ada orang panggil, I tak dengar. Okay, what is it? Siapa yang bertanya? Tak dengar lah suara you.
Dengar
Louder,
tak, madam?
Okay, louder.
Madam.
Yes, dengar. Okay.
Hello? Madam boleh dengar?
Boleh, boleh.
Okay. Kan there are two groups, regulatory auditors and compliant auditors.
Okay.
How is it different from each other? Because you
Okay.
put in two groups.
dengan compliance? Is it?
Yes, regulatory and compliance auditor.
Okay, regulatory is actually doing compliance job. Okay, most of the time. Contohnya, like you might be working as an auditor, like for instance in Securities Commission. Okay, Securities Commission, what happened is that your role is actually to ensure the listed company comply to the requirements such as listing requirement. Okay. For instance, in listing requirements, we have chapter 15, which is on corporate governance. So that's only one part, because there are many regulatory that listed company need to comply with. So what they will do, they would actually use similar like any other auditor. You would have benchmark. That means you are going to refer to the practices of the company. Is it in compliance to the requirement of the listing requirements or not? Okay, so when you're talking about regulatory ni, that means you are more checking on the level of compliance. So that's why your role is more of like compliance auditor lah. Okay, another example of compliance auditor is ISO. Okay, you know SIRIM? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So SIRIM, what are they doing? They are the one that offer to the company. If the company wants to go for ISO and so on, they are the one that offer, right? Okay, so company, when they want to go for ISO, so they would actually ensure that their procedure of the company is actually in line to the requirement of the ISO. Okay, so once they comply, then SIRIM will come and validate. Okay, now your procedure comply to the ISO requirement, so you get your ISO status. So when you get your ISO status, meaning that you can declare to the public, to your customer, to your supplier and so on, that now you are a company with ISO 4000, for instance. Okay, so after 3 years or maybe on yearly basis, depends on the ISO requirement. They need, SIRIM need to ensure that company who have this ISO is actually, the process too is actually not at the point of application only, but continuously apply. Okay, continuously being practices in the daily procedures and routines. So ISO auditor will come into the company and do the checking. Okay, checking of what? Checking of the process of procedures with regard to ISO requirement is actually in compliance. Also compliance. Okay, another example like JAKIM. Okay, JAKIM, they also have auditor. Okay, memanglah dia tak support internal auditor, but they call like, okay, JAKIM issue what? JAKIM issue halal certificate. Okay, so company who have halal certification on certain period or certain basis, they will need to be checked. They will need to be audited. So JAKIM will send their staff go into the company and check, okay, are they comply to the requirement of halal certification or not? So what do? You check compliance. So compliance auditor. So it's actually more or less the same lah. Okay, it's more of checking your compliance, your practices are actually in compliance to the certain requirements or regulations or whatever policies and procedures. Okay, so it's more or less the same thing, compliance. So when talking about compliance tu, bila orang cakap compliance audit tu, dah tahu dah apa dia. Lebih kepada you want to check, okay, you have the benchmark of of certain practices, regulation whatsoever, and then you check practices. Okay, how big is the gap practices and regulations or requirement. That is what compliance audit. Okay, clear?
Clear, madam. Thank you.
Alright. Any other question?
Madam.
Yes.
I just need some clarification for outsourcing of internal audit.
Okay.
Okay. For if outsourcing of internal audit, that means the firm of internal audit can or cannot be the same with the firm of external audit.
Can, no problem.
And how they differentiate?
How they made?
Are
How
they
they become
still
independent?
Yeah.
The common question. Okay, you all have to get this clear. Okay, it's like this. First thing you have to understand. Okay, as simple as before lah. Okay, let me talking about before, right? Or any other audit firm actually. Okay, nowadays it's a bit clear. Alright, meaning that whenever you want to, means in the audit firm, of course you come with the one brand, okay, like PwC, KPMG, EY, apa lagi satu, Deloitte, whatever lah, yang small one, yang medium one like BDO and so on. Okay, you come under one brand. Okay, that is actually your branding. However, when talking about entity, okay, entity, that means they are actually a different entity, right? Because this is actually the evolution in auditing standards, where with regard to the independent, meaning that if you are to provide consulting, if you are to provide assurance, it have to be not a different thing anymore, but it's a different entity. Okay, different entity. So if let's say talking about PwC, you actually PwC consulting entity. If you're PwC assurance services. Okay, if you provide tax, you actually PwC tax services. So if you really want to check, okay, if you work there, if whenever you talk about the communication and so on, you would actually look at the letterhead. Okay, if you check the letterhead, it's actually all different entity. So that is actually how they maintain their independence. That's why eventually, let's say it comes from the same firm, PwC. PwC also do internal audit services, but it is actually totally different team, different partner. Why? Because it's all in the first place, there are two different entity. So it's okay to provide. The same thing also apply, okay, for the small or medium firm. It's just that sometimes when you go to the medium or smaller firm, the boundary tu is a bit not clear lah. It's like grey line, something like that. But on the paper, on the talking about entity, they have the structure. Okay, they have the structure separate entity. Okay, but then because they are smaller scale, therefore like they are within one building, one office, something like that. But if you go to the big four, it is actually a different team, different partner. Even though in the same building but different floor, or maybe same floor. Okay.
Okay, understood,
So,
madam. Thank you.
So it can be from the same company. It's actually different. Sebab tu when I read you all punya practical training report kan, the first part department tu dah already salah. The way of how you all explain. In the understanding tu. Okay. Any other question? Any other? No other question?
Madam,
Yes.
I wanted to clarify my understanding regarding the roles of audit committee and internal auditors.
Okay.
Does the audit committee have a lot of power in determining the work that the internal auditor do? For instance, do the
Yes.
internal auditor conduct work only when the audit committee instruct them to, or they can propose to audit committee when they want to do a specific audit on a specific department?
Okay, it's like this. Normally, audit committee ni approval body je lah. Okay, so in real life, what happen is that internal audit together with the chief internal auditor, they would actually, because they are the one that have to do, this is according to the performance standard, they are actually the one that have to do the risk assessment, audit planning. So audit planning pun, or it's not only for 1 year, it might be for long term, maybe 2 years punya audit planning, maybe. Alright, so they are the one that do the audit planning, and then they plot based on their risk assessment, based on the audit universe that they have, what are the area that need to be done, okay, based on the risk level and so on. So they will propose to audit committee. Okay, table out to the audit committee, and audit committee being a party who have the expert about the business, who knows also about the company, because they attend board meeting. Okay, during board meeting you have management, they talk about the issues, right? Okay, high level issues. So they know also about the company. So based on the input given by the chief internal auditor, and also based on the inputs they gather from the body can validate whether the planning is actually adequate or not. So if let's say not adequate and they know something about which maybe internal audit don't know, they can actually propose to the internal auditor to look also into that matter. That's one. Second thing, management also can request internal auditor to do some urgent job or non-urgent job. They can propose to the chief internal audit, which internal audit will carry this matter to the audit committee and again get approval, then also can be executed. So the source of the work for internal auditors can come from internal auditors itself, can also come from management itself, can also come from audit committee. Okay, so that's how the scope. Of course, approval is the audit committee. Clear?
Okay, thank you, madam.
Okay. How about internal auditors audit timeline? Is it the same as in external auditor? You are talking about audit timeline for, okay, external auditor, dia punya timeline dia sebab dia do financial audit. So financial audit, we know that after year end, within 4 months from year end, you have to submit to complete the audit and do AGM. Okay, so that is the timeline in general lah when we talking about financial audit for external auditor. For internal auditors, dia tak ada timeline. Timeline in the sense that dia macam ni tau. Dia actually for internal auditors what happen is that they already have a plan. In the beginning of the year, they already perform their risk assessment. They already assess, okay, their job scope is actually everything in the company. First, that means what are the auditable areas? What are the areas that need to be audited? Basically everything lah. Okay, every single segment in the business too must be audited. Okay, so you have that as your pool of auditable areas, and then you assess risk. Okay, so based on the risk assessment, that's why they call it risk-based audit. Okay, so based on the risk, it will drive you which are the area that need to be audited yearly or biannually or maybe 5 year sekali baru you audit or non-auditable area. Okay, you already identify that. So you already plot, okay, that means based on that auditable area, you already plot for 1 whole year punya project, and then of course you have some ample, some slot, free slot for any urgent job. So you don't have like timeline like external audit. You know you have to do the job, but you already have plot your milestone, okay, in your audit plan. So that's why I said internal auditors, they have job throughout the year, but they don't have like external auditor where they have peak season, off peak season. No. Okay, maybe the peak season, not to say peak lah, the pressure maybe when you have urgent job. Okay, urgent job where, because sometimes you get triggers, you get triggers, requests where management said, okay, look into this because we suspect something. So you have urgent job. So you have to do within like 2 weeks. That is where you may be stay back lah. Tapi not too long. Okay, you punya stay back pun tak ada sampai 4 AM. No, not to that extent. Okay, so it's actually quite interesting. Nowadays, the job of internal auditors is actually quite interesting. And in fact, after years of working, you can become, because I have one of my friend, okay, now it's actually become advisory, business advisory to the SMEs. Okay, how to improve your internal control, how to improve your business operation. He works on the freelance basis. So just from the experience of working as an internal auditors. Okay, alright, clear, Fauzan? Okay, so it's not like as an auditor where your job scope is a financial audit, different. Okay, any other? Okay, if there is no other, no more you all want to talk about Sam Labi? Ni mana dia? Alright, sekejap Okay. Alright, so now let's look at the SIMDABI. You all have you all read the case? Some of you already pasted on the Padlet, eh? Okay, never mind. Let's discuss. Question? Have you read? Okay, I hope you have read. Okay, this is actually actual things happen, which is being right into a case. Quite interesting. Okay, which involve the Big Short. This is actually alright. First thing, I would like to use this case as an example for your project. Okay, so it's actually similar to your project lah. So what happened is that you analyze about the, in this case, let's say, give example. So in this case, what happened is that we analyze the issues in the SIMDABI. Okay, so based on the findings, we can actually see the flow of the events that happen. Okay, flow of the events that happen, and from there we can actually identify which party is actually the one that create the issue. Okay, which entity is actually the one that create the issue. Alright, because SIMDABI is really diversified. Okay, so they have many different subsidiaries inside. So here you can see that it started in the SIM engineering. Okay, one of the business segment. Alright, and then what are the issues with regard to the SIM engineering and so on. So you can see from this case, what are the events that happen, and then who are the parties that involved, and who is actually creating, okay, or lead to the issues to happen and so on. Okay, what are the causes of the issues to happen and so on. So this is where you need to do in your project as well. Okay, get the whole picture of the events and then see the flows of the event, and then from the flow of the events too, you can actually detect, okay, what are the issues involved and so on. Alright, and then here they also mentioned about the role of the board of directors and also a little bit about internal auditors. Okay, so this is the part of second question where we ask you to relate to what you have learned in class. Okay, so in class you have learned about MCCG. Okay, what are the MCCG has said about the board of directors in terms of the roles, in terms of the responsibility, in terms of the requirement, and so on, so on. And then what are the MCCG has already spelled out about the roles of internal auditors, what they need to do, and so on, so on. So this is where you see what is actually being practiced in SIMDABI. Is it aligned to the requirement of MCCG or not? Is it aligned to the PPF or not? Okay. Alright, so that means you relate back what you have learned in class, okay, what has been discussed in the regulatory framework, and how far is the gap, okay, between the practices and the requirement inside the regulatory framework. Okay, so that is actually what we want you to do in regards to your project. Okay. How is actually to approach your, how to complete your project. Okay, anyone would like to give me snapshot about the case? Not only one student, it can be few. Maybe someone start first, continue by another. Anyone? Anyone would like to start the ball rolling? Penatlah, asyik I je cakap. You all lah cakap. Come on, anyone would like to start the ball rolling? Who start first will be easier. No one? Come on.
Madam.
Okay. Proceed.
My name is Nazirul.
Your name? Okay, Nazrul.
Started.
Nazirul. Okay. Nazirul.
I think it started when somebody announced that it's earning have a loss of 964 million, which is kind of amounted to 1 billion, but mainly the losses was contributed by 4 of its projects. Especially one of the project that involve, I think it's the project involving Bakui, related to the hydroelectric dam, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone would like to top up? To add on to that? Next. Come on. This is similar like your ICS lah. Same exercise. Anyone?
Madam,
Yes. Okay, proceed.
may I add something?
Yes, please, please.
From what I can observe from the case, Sam Dhabi had invested, I had accepted 3 projects that are quite out of their capabilities, and I think it was a bad judgment.
Okay. Why you say bad judgment?
Because every time when in the case when they explain that they accept any project, which is 3 projects that I remember, each time they will say that even they don't have the capability and resources to fully complete the project.
Okay. Right. So that's the reason why you say it's bad project. Okay.
I think it's bad
Take note on that
judgment
point.
for them to accept them.
Okay. Take that point, and I want others to think how that could relate to governance. Okay, how that point could relate to governance, especially my question number 2. Okay, how that point could relate to governance and how you use governance to strengthen or to overcome that point. Okay.
Madam,
Yes. Yes.
is it
Proceed,
correct?
Hadi.
Is it correct if I say that since this is the first mega project for the company, so the board and the company itself has to be extra careful and strengthen their governance, and does not take a simple answer as a solution to their problem.
Okay.
As you can see in the first case, the internal auditor reported, they said there's a problem, but then they just accept the solution by the CEO just because it is a simple practice in the industry. But this is a bigger project, the first of it, the first for the company. So they should not take it as that. Take it just because it is a practice of the industry. They should be more careful.
Okay. How to be more careful? Okay, let's say I am in the
Let's see.
okay, let's say I am as the management, okay? Of course, I want to test my capabilities because if you never challenge yourself, you never know, okay, whether you are capable or not. All right, you have your current resources, but to what extent your resources can actually provide values to the company, for instance, without ever trying, okay? So that's why you take the, let's say I am the CEO, I want to test. I know that I have these capabilities. Maybe I should give it a try. Okay. So, just now you're talking about board of directors. Okay. Before the board of directors, which is actually too late already, for the board to highlight this issue at the level of management. Okay. I'm still talking about governance. At the level of management, how would you able to overcome or detect all these possible problems which could happen if you undergo or if you take this particular mega projects? Okay. Right. So you have, okay, I want to highlight this. In the business, in the company, you have first line of defense, second line of defense, third line of defense. Okay. So third line of defense is actually internal auditors. First line of defense is actually management. Second lines of defense is actually governance and also risk management practices. Alright. So if your first line of defense, meaning your management is really being trained how to assess the risks, the problems or the issues of possible issues of a particular project, then your first line of defense is already very good. That means the second line of defense just ensure that it is there. But if your first line of defense out, then second line of defense, which is the governance. Okay, because nowadays in the company you have governance department, governance and control. Certain company they call it. Some company they call it governance and risk management department. Okay, so these are the second lines of defense for the company, where nowadays it's actually very common for the company to apply risk assessment for all the projects. Okay, has it been mentioned in SAMDABI case or not? And of course, you have third line of defense, which is internal auditors. This is how you should analyze, okay, the role of governance in the case. Okay, I give you some tips lah. Okay, how to assess the scenario, okay, or problems, issues. This is what also you can do for your 1 MDB case. Okay, you can actually also read more on the second line of defense and also third line of defense. Third line of defense is actually internal auditors lah, which I already explained to you just now, the role of internal auditors and so on. Second line of defense, risk management. I'm not sure whether it has been covered in any of your finance subject whatsoever. Okay, that is actually talking about the risk management practices in the company. That is also another level of control mechanism in the company. Okay, who wants to add on to that case just now? Okay, Hadi is the last one. Next. Okay, come on, snapshot of the case. Any more who likes to add on? Just now you already talked about the first page and the second page lah, okay, about the issues. Okay, moving on to the next page, talking about the board of directors. Who would like to snapshot about this third and fourth page? Anyone? Any volunteer? Ladies? No volunteer? Come on. Okay. This part, you can actually see the role of the CEOs. Okay, what are the CEOs do? Okay, and how good is the CEO? And then you also have information about the board of directors. So you can also analyze about the board of directors, the background. Normally people will say, who are the directors? Okay, are they a good directors? Are they experienced directors? Right? Are they someone that really good to say? Because sometimes by looking at the name, you know already that is actually a good person. Okay, very strong character person. Okay, and yet this thing happened. So what has gone wrong? Okay, in terms of this company, right? Because talking about SAMDABI is actually a very big company, right? It has been there in the market for quite some time. Okay, never create issues and so on, except that for these issues lah. Okay, and then they also mentioned about the little bit about the internal auditors. What are the internal auditors have done? Okay, so from here, okay, my first question highlight about the role of internal auditors. So you can actually assess whether based on this information provided inside the case, you can actually evaluate. Okay, right? Has the internal audit function in SAMDABI has done their work or not? Okay, as what being required by the standards. Okay, because if they have done their work, okay, is it good enough or not? Okay, what if let's say lacking, what are the things that they need to do more? If they are good, okay, what are the parts which are good? Okay, so try to answer in that manner. Alright, because I want to see how you put your arguments, your justification, so that again to train you, okay, to train you how to tackle scenarios question. Okay, the second question where I'm talking about preventive measures, okay, what need to be in place? So this is actually, I'm referring to the governance part, like I propped just now. Okay, maybe you want to look at the first line of defense, second lines of defense, third line of defense, and so on. Okay, all right. Any more who likes to talk some more about the case?